The Dark Knight Trilogy is seen to be some of the best movie trilogies of all time. So I decided to look back at these movies and see if they're really as good as people remember, or if they're overrated. First, let's start with Batman Begins. I think Batman Begins is a pretty solid movie. I think the characters were pretty good for the most part. I really like Christian Bale as Batman. I also really like Lucius. Morgan Freeman is playing the typical Morgan Freeman character, and that works perfectly fine here. I think his energy and humor is a good addition to the movies that take most things seriously. I also like how he has to hide the fact that he's working with Batman. That can lead to some fun moments. I think Rachel is boring, and writers have a really hard time with making good female love interests for Batman. Bruce and Rachel's relationship just isn't that interesting for me. I do love how Bruce has to pretend to be a playboy asshole so people won't get suspicious, and how that causes conflict with him and Rachel. Rachel thinks he's just an asshole, and that makes me love the scene where Batman reveals who he is to Rachel, and Rachel realizes that's not who Bruce really is. I think that was a good moment. But for the most part, this relationship just isn't that interesting. I also like Alfred and Bruce's relationship. I like their dynamic and how they play off each other. Although I do think the villains are pretty weak in this movie. Falcone was okay. The movie does a good enough job at making us hate him, and seeing him get defeated is pretty satisfying. I also think Ra's al Ghul was pretty okay too. I think he could have been better though. Like, I wanted to learn a little bit more about him. He's pretty one-dimensional. We just get a few lines about his backstory and that's it. I mean, I get it, this is a Batman story, but I think fleshing out our villains more would have made the movie better. I also don't like Scarecrow. He just wasn't very interesting. He's not scary or intimidating. He just comes off as a petulant child. Then in the last scene of him, we see him get defeated by a woman with a taser, and he runs off like a little bitch. We also don't explore this character enough. We don't know why Scarecrow is so obsessed with fear. We get a line about this, but that's it. Overall, Scarecrow was pretty weak in this movie. Missed potential. I think the dialogue is pretty solid. All the characters have plenty of opportunities to express their personality through their dialogue, and all the performances were pretty good for the most part. I also really like the main theme. It just sounds nice. Also, the special effects have aged pretty well. The pacing is also pretty good. Bruce's progression to becoming Batman is satisfying and feels earned. It's exciting to finally see Batman after all the build-up. The beginning scenes with Bruce and Ra's al Ghul were pretty good. It's a perfect introduction to the movie and to Batman. The choreography was also pretty good. The action scenes in general were pretty good. I don't know, maybe I just like ninjas. These scenes teach us everything we need to know about Batman in an efficient way. I also love the superhero montage where the hero is just starting out and building their suit and stuff. I like these types of scenes in most superhero movies. These scenes get the viewer excited to finally see Bruce become Batman. And when Bruce becomes Batman, he's cool and he's intimidating. Exactly what Batman needs to be. The plot is also simple and easy to follow, which is best in superhero movies. Although I found the villain's plan kind of silly. They plan to microwave the water in the city so that it releases the fear toxin inside of it. And I found this to be a little too ridiculous. Like, why wouldn't the League of Shadows just kill everyone in the city? If you really think Gotham is beyond saving, why try to make the Gotham citizens kill each other rather than just killing them yourself? I don't know, like maybe set up a bunch of bombs in the city or something. This plan feels much more sloppy than just killing them yourself. How is this a better plan? But like I said, I really like this movie. It's just overall a solid superhero movie. Our hero is cool and likable, it has good action, and it serves as a good introduction to this character. If this movie is your introduction to Batman, then you definitely become a fan after watching it. 8 out of 10. Just like the last movie had a perfect introduction for Batman, this movie has a perfect introduction for the Joker. Obviously, Heath Ledger as the Joker is the best part of the movie. So much so that Batman kind of takes a back seat in this movie. His performance is fantastic, and this Joker is the best out of all of them. I like pretty much every scene with him. He's creepy and most of all intimidating, which is really important for the Joker and for a villain in a crime thriller. I also like the reference to Batman 1989. Now, I mentioned this before, but I just love the scenes where Batman upgrades his suit. It's just really cool to me. Although Christian Bale's voice is kinda bad in this movie, and it only gets worse in the next movie. I know everyone knows that, but at times, it can be a bit distracting. Also, Rachel isn't really a good character. Her relationship with Bruce and Harvey isn't really done well, and Rachel on her own isn't really an interesting character. I just never really was interested in this narrative. I don't like this whole love triangle between Batman, Harvey, and Rachel. This just isn't interesting at all to me, and it could have been completely cut out of the movie. Also, Rachel, Bruce, and Harvey have very little chemistry with each other. I don't really care about their relationship because it just wasn't fleshed out that well. I also have a few issues with the plot. I get that the Joker is smart, but I think that his plans flow a bit too conveniently for him. I get that things are supposed to go his way for a while, but I think it's a little too much. Like, how did he know there was going to be a cop in his cell that he can piss off enough to attack him? What if he lost the fight? It's quite convenient that he won. Also, how did he know that the guy with the phone in his stomach was going to end up in the same prison as him? That was also pretty convenient. Also, I think that Harvey Dent's narrative wasn't handled very well. We don't get nearly enough time to flesh out this narrative. We're shown that Harvey is essentially a perfect human for most of the movie, and his transition to becoming evil feels a bit forced to me. We should have seen a more flawed version of Harvey before he turns evil, so that when he turns evil, it will feel more believable. I also don't think that Harvey will let the Joker go. He should have definitely killed him. Like, he'd rather kill crooked cops than the fucking Joker, the person that killed his lover. I think this movie would have been better if the Joker was the only villain in it. The choreography wasn't terrible, but I do think it's a bit worse than the last movie. The pacing was still pretty good for the most part. The story is always kept up with exciting moments. There's a lot of twists and turns that keep you excited to keep watching the movie. I also like the boat scene where the people on the boats have to decide whether or not they want to kill the people on the other boat to save themselves. And I thought it was really satisfying when the Joker realizes that they chose not to do it. It was pretty satisfying seeing the Joker's plan fail. Despite my problems with this movie, I still think this movie is pretty good. It has one of the best villain portrayals of all time, and some really iconic lines. All of the performances were solid, the story is exciting to follow, and it was a really solid movie. I don't like this movie as much as Batman Begins, but it's still a really good movie. 8 out of 10. Now we get to the last movie. This is the movie that I had the most problems with. So we start off by seeing that Bruce stops being Batman and just becomes a recluse. And I don't think this is something Batman would do. And he does this because apparently Gotham doesn't need Batman because the crime rates went down. But so what? Gotham is always going to need Batman, and I think Bruce should know that. There's still crime on the streets. There doesn't need to be a larger-than-life supervillain or a 99% crime rate for Batman to be needed. The characters in this movie are pretty weak compared to the last two movies. First of all, I think Bane is lame. His voice is absolutely ridiculous. I don't know why Tom Hardy decided to use this stupid ass voice for him. He's not really imposing or intimidating. I think Bane should be bigger and more muscular. Bane kinda has a case of dad bod. He needs to have more muscle mass and less body fat. He looks like a typical bodybuilder you'd see in the gym. All of this just makes it hard for me to take Bane seriously. Bane is just a lamer version of Ra's al Ghul. He's not really interesting on his own. Also, I think the twist with Bane was stupid. I wish the movie didn't have anything to do with Ra's al Ghul. I wish we could have gotten a completely new villain that wasn't tied to a previous villain. Talia should have been completely cut from the movie, and Bane should have been a more personal villain for Batman. Also, Talia wants to nuke Gotham because it's too evil. But we were clearly told that Gotham has less crime than it's ever had. Even to the point where Batman doesn't even feel that he's needed anymore. I don't really like Selena Kyle. She's again not a very interesting love interest to Batman. Most of our dialogue consists of snarky confidence or something sensual, which isn't really that interesting. Overall, she's just boring, and her relationship with Bruce isn't done well. Also, Alfred is not as good in this movie. He went from being super supportive of Batman to being very against him. Why? This comes out of nowhere, and I really don't like that Alfred leaves Bruce. This is definitely something that I don't think he would do. He acts completely different than how he was in the last two movies for no real reason. The dialogue is also worse than the last two movies. Too much of it consists of exposition. But that's not to say all the lines were bad. There's still some good ones. But it's not nearly as good as the last two movies. Also, I think that the action just isn't that good. It's slow and it feels sloppy. There's no interesting camera work or atmosphere. It's just two people punching each other. No interesting strategy or anything. It's just pretty dull. Like the fight with Batman and Bane. This fight wasn't interesting enough for me. There's no interesting strategy that Batman used to win. I mean, I guess he fights better, and he uses Bane's mask against him. But that's it. That's how Batman wins this fight. I think there should have been a more interesting strategy for the final fight of our hero and villain. And this problem is mainly because of Bane being super weak and lame. Bane should have been huge, way stronger, and had a less exploitable weakness. There should have been a more creative strategy to defeating Bane. He's not even truly defeated by Batman. Selena just blasts him with a missile. Pretty disappointing. The pacing is also off in this movie. Everything progresses way too fast. Bane's ascension happens way too quickly. We don't have enough time to fully explore Bane as a character, and we don't get enough build up to his ascension. Everything feels way too easy for him. Bane gets the nuke and takes over the city way too fast, and there's not enough build up for it. The first half of this movie just wasn't that engaging for me. I just didn't care that much about what was happening in the first two acts of the movie. I don't care that much about the conflict between Alfred and Bruce, because like I said, Alfred shouldn't even have a problem with Bruce being Batman. It's completely out of character for him. This movie just feels rushed in so many places. But I will say that the movie does get better in the second half. Batman getting stronger and returning to Gotham was satisfying to watch. The last third of the movie is really exciting and the situation really feels dire, and the tension is kept up all the way through the movie. So yeah, this is definitely my least favorite movie out of the trilogy. It's by no means a bad movie, but it's definitely the weakest one. The villain in this movie is the weakest one. The plot is the least engaging, and I just didn't enjoy it as much as the other two movies. 6.5 out of 10. So are these movies overrated? Nah, I would say no. Yeah, some people overpraise these movies, but I think these movies still deserve their reputation as some of the best superhero movies of all time. I still love these movies, and it's always a blast to revisit them. Anyways, that's my thoughts on the Dark Knight Trilogy. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe if you want to support, Patreon in the description if you want to support, and bye.